Hi everyone, we are so excited to have you join us today to learn all about the brain and brain cells.
Lovely. So I think I think we'll make a start now, and hopefully anybody that joins a bit late can see the game pin at the bottom and will be able to join. So hi everyone, we are so excited to talk to you all about neurons today. You may not have heard of neurons, or you may have. Hopefully you will learn something new and find this webinar interesting today, kind of no matter at what level you are at the moment in your knowledge about the brain. We're just here to share more about all about the brain with you. So my name is Elena, and I study neuroscience at the University of Bristol, and I actually worked for the British Neuroscience Association last year, doing lots of webinars like this, but also some sessions in classrooms for young people and children of all ages, all about the brain. So I'm very excited to share more neuroscience with you.
Yeah, and hi, I'm Lydia. Again, very excited to be doing this webinar with you today. And I'm in my final year studying biology at Southampton University, and I worked with Elena last year for the British Neuroscience Association, again doing workshops in schools and running webinars just like this one last year. So very excited to be joining with you.
Great, so now hopefully you may have used Kahoot before, you may not, but it should be hopefully not too hard to use. So we have got a question just to start us off with, just to warm us up a bit.
Yeah, so our first question is, we only use 10% of our brain. Is this true or is this false? So have a think. What do you think? Do we only use 10% of our brain, or do we use more than that? Do we use less, maybe? What do you think? And yeah, if you're in the class, maybe put out your answer or stick your hand up. And let's see, and we've already got 5 answers coming in, so that's really exciting, and we're going to soon find out what the answer is.
Brilliant, thank you guys. Yeah, have a go. Lovely, there we go. Thanks everyone for answering. So actually a lot of you did have the correct answer there. Don't worry at all if not. This is just for everybody to have a go. It doesn't matter how much you do or don't know at the moment. Hopefully we can all learn a bit more together today. So the question was, we only use 10% of our brain, and this is false. This is actually something that we refer to as a neuromyth. So that's something that's a bit of a misconception or a misunderstanding about the brain or how it functions. And there are lots of people that actually believe of these neuromyths. So we would like to tell you all about today of how some of these are not true, and to share some neuroscience information and increase your knowledge. So we actually do use our whole brain for many, many important things that we do every single day. And we will talk a bit more about how the brain is so important, all the things that it helps us do. So thank you everyone so much for having a go at that question. We'll have a few more throughout, so it's really lovely to see you getting involved. Lovely, so one more question for you. A lot of you probably know a lot more about the brain that we think, but yeah, just have a go really. It's just a bit of fun to get us going, so have a go. You've got some photos at the bottom there to help you think. So the brain looks a bit like which nuts? Is it a walnut, an almond, a peanut? Oh, lovely, thanks very much guys. So yeah. So it looks like a walnut.
Yeah, well done. So yes, the brain does look a little bit like a walnut, and that's because the brain is really wrinkly. So you can see with the walnut, it seems to have all these kind of wrinkles and grooves, and the brain looks a bit like that as well. And if we go on to oh, we've got the leaderboard. Okay, so oh, he's doing very well. But yeah, great to see people getting involved. And if we go to the next slide, we can see that the brain does have many folds. So here is a picture, a drawing really of the brain, and we can see that it has lots of different folds and grooves. And actually, if the brain was squashed flat, it would be as big as 4 pieces of A4 paper together. So actually, it would be really, really big. It's much bigger if it's flattened out than when it's in our brain. So it's really important the brain is folded in all of these ways. so that we can fit it in our brain. And also it gives it a really high surface area. So I don't know if in school you've ever had to work out the surface area of a cube or a circle or something like that. Maybe you've found that really hard. It can be tricky, math stuff. The brain has a really high surface area because of all these grooves, and it's really important for how the brain works. So it's actually a lot bigger, and it's really good that we can fit it inside of our heads and that it can do all these different jobs. And scientists are really interested in how the brain works. And scientists that study the brain are called neuroscientists. And scientists are really interested in lots of different things, in lots of ways that the brain works. And it's really important that we understand how it works, because often the brain goes wrong, and there are lots of different diseases and times when the brain can stop working properly. And we can study the brain in lots of different ways. We can sometimes, when a person dies, we can look at their brain afterwards, especially if they had a disease when they were alive. We can see what their brain looks like. But we don't just have to wait until someone dies. We can actually now, because we have lots of different types of technology and machines, we can actually study the brain in lots of different ways as well. So we've got another question.
We do, yeah. So thank you very much, Lydia. So we've spoken about how we can look at the brain in many different ways. So you may have gone to a hospital, maybe somebody that you know, maybe has gone to hospital and had a healthcare professional or a doctor, somebody look at their brain, but scientists also use different machines to look at people's brains, so we can understand more about the brain. So in this question, actually, so it's what do you think this machine is? And you have to type in your answer rather than choose an answer from a list this time. So please have a go if you haven't already. You can see loads of you are super fast, so well done for that. Thanks so much for having a go. Lovely, well done, guys. Yep, so there are many variations of what it could have been. So what we were really trying to get at here is that it's a scanner, it's a brain scanner. It scans the brain so we can have a look inside at what is going on.
Yeah, don't worry if you didn't quite get that. That could have been a bit tricky if you didn't quite type in the exact letters, so don't worry at all. But we can see our leaderboard again.
Well done, guys.
And yes, so we this was a brain scanner or an MRI scanner, and sometimes, as Elena said, people go into a hospital and people can look at their brain, and on the right you can see a brain. So you can see what someone's brain looks like inside their head. And as I was saying, it's really important for scientists to understand how the brain works, not only just what it looks like when it's going wrong, but we really need to understand how the brain works when it's healthy, when it's working properly, and all the different things that are going on inside the brain, especially so that when it does go wrong, we know what's happened and we know what to do to treat it and to help people get better.
Lovely, thank you. So our next question is, what does the brain do? So what do you think the brain does? We've spoken about how the brain is so important for many things that we do, and it's got all those grooves and wrinkles so that it can fit in loads of information inside a small compact space, and it can fit in our heads. So why is the brain so important? What do you think it does? So again, just have a go. Oh, lovely to see all your answers coming in. Great. Thank you very much, guys, for answering that. So we've got quite mixed feelings on that one. So as you can see, actually, this was a bit of a trick question, and it might surprise you that actually the brain does all of those things and more. So that's super interesting, isn't it? You would think, you know, wouldn't think that maybe it does all those things. It controls our movement, allows us to speak, allows us to think, holds our memories. I feel like a lot of people maybe think of the brain as just how we think and where our memories are stored. But actually the brain controls so many things, like how I'm speaking to you right now and how I'm moving my arms as well. And if I want to go for a run, lots and lots of things. So thank you very much, guys, again for having a go at that. Lovely, look at all those points. Thanks, guys. So as we've spoken, the brain is so super important. So we can think about the brain as a bit of a control center. So it's the control center of our body. It controls loads and lots of things, not just things that people normally associate the brain with, maybe our emotions and our thoughts and feelings and memories. But again, if I want to go for a run, if I want to look over there, if I want to speak to you, if I'm writing something, the brain is involved in every single thing we do every day. So it's super important. Okay.
So we're going to be thinking more about how the brain works. But to understand that, we need to think about what the brain's made of. And to help us get into thinking about that a bit, we're going to think about what a house is made of. So here we've got a question: what is a house made of? And specifically, what's this house made of? So again, type in your answer. And we can see 5 answers already coming in, 6. Wow, well done. So have a think. And oh, what is the answer? Brick. Yeah, bricks. Well done. So I think everyone got that one right. Great. So yeah, houses, a lot of houses, at least in the UK, are made of bricks or stone. And so all the bricks are put together next to each other, and they make up house, don't they? And so the body is also made of things a bit like bricks. Oh, and we can see our scoreboard again. Well done, E, who's in our top spot at the moment. So yeah, our bodies are made of things that are a bit like bricks, and they're called cells. And they're also a bit like Lego blocks because they come in lots of different shapes and sizes, so that they can do their specific jobs. So we have muscle cells, and muscle cells are able to form the muscle and contract to do what muscles need to do to help us run. And we've got blood cells, and blood cells look very different to muscle cells, and that's because they've got a different job. So our bodies are made of these cells, lots of different shapes and sizes that have different jobs and make up our body as a whole.
Great. So now this is a question actually, so don't worry about getting your other tab up at the moment. It's just to get us thinking a bit more. So as Lydia said, that so just like a house is made of bricks, our bodies are also made up of building blocks that are cells. And we've got lots of different cells with lots of different jobs because there are lots of things going on in our bodies all the time. And now the brain is also made up of a type of cell, and these are neurons. You might have seen neurons before, what they look like, or you may have not. That's absolutely fine. So there's a cartoon on the screen here of a neuron in the middle of the slide, and there's also underneath, so those are real neurons that somebody is looking through a microscope to see them. So this is their shape and what they look like, and actually lots of neurons connect together in the brain to be able to work together to bring about all these functions and all these important things that we've said they do.
Yeah, so as Elena said, with that picture that we just saw of neurons down a microscope, neurons are really small, so we need special machines to be able to look at them. And maybe you've used a magnifying glass to look at something, maybe a bug in the garden, and you've wanted to see it up close and see what it looks like. So microscopes are a bit like magnifying glasses. They allow us to see really, really small things. They make them bigger. And so scientists use microscopes, lots of different types of microscopes, to look at small things and to look at neurons, because neurons are really, really small. So we've got another question for you. So if we need microscopes to be able to see neurons, they must be very small. And how small do you think they are? Now I'll give you a hint that some neurons can be very long, but they're very thin. So that's why we need to use microscopes to see them. So do you think they're the same thickness as a human hair? Do you think they're as thin as a phone charger wire? Maybe 3 times thinner than a human hair, or as thin as a paper clip? So how thin do you think a neuron is? Maybe a bit tricky, trying to imagine. Really, really small. Oh, great. Yeah, so 6 of you got that, well done. Don't worry if you didn't. So they're actually 3 times thinner than a human hair. So they're really, really, really thin. Even though they can be long, they're really thin. And so we need microscopes to be able to see them. So let's see what the scoreboard looks like. Oh, we've got some
Well
change.
done, everyone.
Well done. And Hawthorne class is doing well. Well done. So we've got more pictures of neurons here. And so you can see a picture of one neuron on its own on the left. And neurons have branches. So they're a bit like trees. You can see it kind of looks like a tree with roots, and then a bit like a trunk and branches coming off. And these branches are really, really important because, as we will talk about a bit later on when we make our neurons, neurons need to be able to talk to each other, and that's how the brain works. These branches are going off in lots of different directions to talk to the neurons around them. And on the right, we can see a picture of lots of different neurons. And sometimes it can be hard for scientists to pick out the neurons because there are so many all together in one space. And so scientists can actually inject neurons with a chemical that makes them glow different colours. So a bit like a glow stick, if you've ever been to a party and you've had glow sticks, it's a little bit like this. And so scientists can make them glow different colours, and they can take a picture of them, and they call this a rainbow. Because it's a little bit like a rainbow but made up of neurons, so they can see all the individual neurons glowing different colours.
Lovely. So now we're actually going to be making a neuron together. So I hope you've got all your materials ready. If not, you might want to take a minute to quickly grab some things right now. If you didn't have anything prepared, not to worry. Hopefully you can make a neuron out of some household things that you've just got lying around. And that will be absolutely fine. Feel free to get as creative as you like. We've had people make them out of sweets or Play-Doh, lots of things, right? So really, if you're as creative as you like, you can make them out of anything, really. So I've got my materials here today. I'll be making one out of pipe cleaners, and then I've also been making one out of some random things that I've got around my home. I've got some twine and a tube, and lots of random things, really. So you can make it out of anything. So I hope you've got your things ready. What will you be making a neuron out of, Lydia?
Oh, so I've got some nice colourful paper here. Lots of colourful paper. I've got some kind of packing paper. So a bit like newspaper. I've got some nice ribbon. So yeah, lots of different things to make my neuron.
Great, thank you. So again, here are our neurons. So we will be making something that looks similar to these today, but feel free to get as creative as you like. And as we're going through, we'll be talking about all the different parts. Lovely. So yeah, we'll be talking all about these different parts that are really important to how neurons are able to do their jobs. Oh, lovely. Thank you. We've got a question. We'll get to that in a minute. Thank you very much. Again, if you do have any questions, pop them in the Q&A for us, and we'll answer them as we go. So we will go through all these different parts as we are adding them to our model. And they're all really important for how neurons talk to each other, because the way that neurons communicate helps the brain do all the things that it does.
Great. So we are going to start with a part called the cell body. So you can see on the slides that it's highlighted here. So it's the kind of round bit in the middle there with the arrow next to it. And the cell body is a bit like the main office of a neuron. So if you've ever heard of DNA, this is the part of the neuron that contains the DNA. And this part of the neuron tells the other parts of the neuron what to do. So it's doing that, and it's kind of sending things called proteins to different parts of the cell. So it's really like the head office of the neuron, in control and doing lots of different things. So we are going to make a cell body. That's the first part of our neuron that we're going to make today. Great. So I'm going to be showing you how to make neurons that look a little bit like the first and the third neuron on the slides. So if you've got some colourful paper and some tissue paper, something like that, like I have here, you can just scrunch it up into a little ball. So I'm just going to be doing that, scrunching it up just like that. making a little ball, which is going to be our cell body. And it's helpful if you've got some sticky tape, just to get a bit of sticky tape and stick it together just to keep it secure, just like that. So we've got a little cell body, and if you want, I'm just going to be doing things quite quickly, but you can put more layers on if you want to make a bigger cell body. I've got some kind of packing paper, a bit like newspaper here. So I'm just going to get some of that, and again, just scrunch it up into a nice little ball. Here we are. And I'm just going to get another bit of sticky tape to secure that. So there we are. If you're making neurons a bit like mine, you can do that. And Elena's going to show you how to do the other neurons.
Great, yeah. I just thought I'd quickly, so I think somebody raised their hand earlier. If that's because you've got a question, it would be great if you could pop it into the Q&A, just so we can keep track of all the questions. And there is actually somebody that's asked the question for us. And the question is, are there different types of neurons? And of course there are, yeah, there are lots of different types of neurons, just like our body has different types of cells. Has different types of cells, just like Lydia mentioned, we've got muscle cells and blood cells. We've also got different types of neurons in our brain, and they could be different shapes, and also they've got slightly different functions within the brain. So yes, there are lots of different types of neurons as well. But right, so for my neurons that I'm making, as I mentioned, I'll be making that second neuron and the last neuron, that's the pipe cleaner neuron. So for my first neuron, I'm kind of making it out of household items, just things I've got lying around. So for my cell body, I've actually just found I've got this circular tub right here, and this is going to be my cell body. Again, you can find anything around your house to be your cell body, but so I've got this and I'm just going to be attaching it to things later on. Nothing else I really need to do to this one just yet. But for the pipe cleaner neuron, what I'm going to do is get one long pipe cleaner. Mine's yellow here today, and I'm going to take one end and just fold it down like this so that it's into a sort of circular shape, and just roll it all the way down, probably until sort of halfway down that pipe cleaner. So it looks a bit like this. So maybe yours looks like this, maybe it looks a bit different, but that's okay, as long as it's got all the different parts we're talking about today. But yeah, that is my cell body there. Okay, so now I think we are ready to move on to the next bit, which is the axon. Lovely, should be able to go on to the next bit there. Lovely, so now we're going to add the axon. So Lydia mentioned how that cell body is super important because it's kind of like controlling a control center or a main office, I think, as Lydia explained, of the neuron. Now the axon is super important because it gets messages from one side of a neuron to another. So the message or the signal, we may call it, travels down this axon to the other end of the neuron to be able to pass this information onto another neuron. So as we said, all these neurons connect together to be able to talk to each other and for the brain to function. So let's add the axon.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to make an axon out of my colourful paper I've got here. So if you've got some tissue paper or colourful paper, why not just roll it down? So I can show you like this, roll it all the way down and keep doing that. And if you want, so I've got a roll of paper, if you want to make it a bit thinner, you can even twist it. So you can see how I'm twisting it. And I'm going to do this all the way along, and I'm just going to do this quite quickly, but you can do it so that yours looks a bit neater than mine will look. So I'm going to keep twisting all the way along, and then when you get to the end, just leave a bit at the end that you don't twist, or if you've rolled it, just leave it kind of open like that, because that will come in handy a bit later on. And I'm going to take some sticky tape, and I'm going to take my axon. I've got my little cell body that I made earlier. Mine's quite small, but you can make yours bigger if you want. And I'm just going to stick the two together with a bit of tape, just like that. And if you need some help, you can always ask a parent or carer or an adult, whoever's there with you, maybe a teacher, to help you with this. So I've got my cell body and Axon, and again with the newspaper one, I'm just going to grab a bit of paper and again just kind of roll it or twist it to make a really long Axon. And again, leave one end that you don't twist because we're going to do something with that later on. And again, get some sticky tape and get your cell body and your Axon, and you just want to stick the two together. So yeah, you should have a cell body attached to your Axon now.
Great, thank you, Lydia. Looks like a cool newspaper neuron. So we've got where we had my cell body for the neuron that I'm making, the first neuron that I'm making. I'm now going to attach an axon, which for me is this little tube here. So you may have lots of things this shape around your house. It could be maybe a kitchen roll tube, anything really. And just like Lydia did, I'm going to attach them together with some tape. You probably want to be a bit more, you'll probably do this a lot better than I am to really make it secure. You can use a lot more tape. There we go. So that's all attached together, and that's my cell body with my axon there, ready to attach all the other bits. And then for the pipe cleaner neuron, we've actually got quite an easy job for this one, because remember it looked like this, where we had rolled the first part of the pipe cleaner into a cell body. Well, now this bit that we've left dangling down, that can actually act as our axon now. So there we go, the cell body with the axon attached.
Great, so we're going to learn about our next part of our neuron now. So our next part is called a dendrite, or the dendrites. And remember that earlier on I was talking about how neurons have lots of branches going off in different directions. Well, these are actually the dendrites. So this is their special name. And the dendrites are a bit like ears of the neuron. So they're going out and listening for messages from other neurons, because remember we said it's really important that neurons talk to each other. So the dendrites help the neuron to listen out and hear those messages from the other neurons that are going to come into it. So we're going to add some dendrites to our neurons. So you can use lots of different things for dendrites. And I've got some cotton wool buds like this, and I'm just going to cut them in half and stick them onto my cell body. But you may have different things. You may have ice cream sticks. I think Elena's going to use some pens, and we've got lots of different things. So I'm just going to get one of these, get some sticky tape, and just oh dear, it's a bit fiddly. Again, you might want to ask an adult who's there with you to help you. So I'm just sticking one of these halves of a cotton wool bud on, and I'll stick another one on. And you can give your neuron as many dendrites as you want. Give it lots of these dendrites, lots of ears to hear the messages. So I'm going to carry on doing that. And again, it's just the same for your newspaper neuron. Use whatever you've got and put lots of dendrites on it.
Great, thank you, Lydia. So for my neuron, remember we left off like this. So we're going to be adding some dendrites coming off the cell body. So the neuron can receive information, kind of like the ears, remember, receive information from other neurons. So what I'm going to use as dendrites, as Lydia said, are pens. So I've got lots of different pens here. You might, you could add as many as you like, really, as many dendrites for materials as you've got, or as many as you like. So again, I'm just going to stick these on the back of what I've got as my cell body here. You can have as many of these or as few of these as you like, completely up to you. But there we go, that's that done for me. So now I have got some dendrites, and this is what mine looks like, quite a bit of a funny neuron. I'm sure you guys are way more creative than me. There we go, so that's my dendrite sticking up there. And then I've got the pipe cleaner neuron, and I'm going to take some smaller pipe cleaners of a different color just to make us able to differentiate the different structures that we've got that we're going to be adding. So what I'm going to do is just pop it through that little bit that we rolled down. and then pull it up and then twist it together. So that's one little pipe cleaner that's given me what looks like 2 dendrites there. So I might do that again with another one, but again, you can do this as many times as you like, make your neuron however you like. So there we go. So mine's got 4 dendrites on this one. That's what it looks like. So hopefully you're all getting okay with your neuron models. We're going to move on to the next part now, which is the axon terminal. So the axon terminal is a bit like the neuron's mouth. So it's the bit that passes on a message to the next neuron. So we've spoken about how the dendrites receive the message, and this message goes down the neuron, all the way down the axon to the other side of the neuron, to the end of it, which is the axon terminal. And this axon terminal can then pass on the message to the other neurons for them to then detect via their dendrites. So let's make this part as well.
Great. So I've got my neuron here, it's taking shape. And remember, I told you when you were twisting your paper to make the axon to leave a bit at the end. Well, this is when this bit comes into play. So we can just kind of open this bit out a bit. And what we're going to do is we're just going to cut inside it, just cut strips. So hopefully you can see that. We're just cutting all the way around. So it's going to have lots of axon terminals here, and then you can sort of fluff it up a bit like that. And here we are, we can see our neuron with lots of axon terminals at the end. And it's just the same with our newspaper one or whatever kind of paper you're using. Again, you can make this flat if that's going to make it easier. And we're just going to cut strips into the paper all the way along. Give it these axon terminals. And if you've got beads or Play-Doh or anything and you want to put a little bead or blob at the end, you can actually make something called the terminal bulb, which is kind of right at the very end where that message gets passed on to the next neuron. So that's the terminal bulb if you want to add a bead on. I haven't got any beads with me today, but you can make your neurons as colourful and jazzy as you want. We've had people make them out of Play-Doh and as Elena was saying, sweets and all sorts. So be as creative as you can with your neurons. We'd love to see that.
Great, thank you, Lydia. So now with my neuron, this is what we left at, and so we are looking to add the axon terminal. And what I've got actually is like another little tub that I've got lying around my house. There we go. So what I'm going to do is attach this to the end of my axon, which is that long tube. So actually, instead of having lots of kind of little bits of axon terminal coming out, I've just got the one terminal bulb here, as you can see for that one. There we go. So that's actually, I suppose because I've got it in there, this one can stand up, but yours can lay flat on a piece of paper or on the table. And then for my pipe cleaner neuron, so to add the axon terminal, I'm going to take a small piece of a different coloured pipe cleaner, and I'm just going to twist it round the end, just like this. Just really bunch it round the end, around the end of the axon, the end of that long bit that we left coming out of the cell body. There we go, and mine looks a bit like that. So you can see that's the axon terminal there, the bit that allows it to pass the message on to other neurons.
Great, and we've got our final bit now, final part of the neuron, and this is called the myelin sheath. The myelin sheath. So it's a funny word, or funny words, but what it is something wrapped around the axon that helps the message to travel really super fast along that axon. So it's really important to have this myelin sheath, and we say that it insulates the axon so that that message travels really quickly along the axon. So we are going to add a myelin sheath onto our neurons that we're making. And I've got some ribbon here. So I'm just going to cut some ribbon. Got some ribbon, and you can use some string or twine, even a shoelace if you ask the person whose shoe you're taking it off of. And so I've got my neuron here, and I'm just going to get my ribbon and tie it up at this end near the cell body. And again, this might be a little bit fiddly, so you can ask an adult who's with you to help you. And then I'm just going to get my ribbon and wrap it all the way around my axon. So I'm just going to do this really quickly to show you, but again, you can be really careful and make your neuron really pretty to do that. So we're making sure that we're insulating our axon, making sure that message can travel really, really quickly to the other side. And then when I've got to this side, near to the axon terminal, I'm just going to tie it in another knot, and you can stick it with some sticky tape if that's going to help as well. So I'm just going to tie it there. So I've got my axon terminal, my myelin sheath wrapped all around my axon, as you can see. And I'm just going to do the same again with the newspaper one. So if you're making one with this kind of paper, again, it's the same thing, wrap it all around and tie it at both ends.
Lovely, thank you, Lydia. Your neurons are coming on really nicely. So we've actually got a question in the Q&A that I'll quickly have a go at answering before we move on to how I make my version of the neurons. And the question is, what are the messages like? Right, so that's a really interesting question, actually, because we know, as we've said, these messages are received by the dendrites and they travel along the axon to then be passed on. But what are these messages? So we can refer to them as electric signals. It's a bit like electricity. So just how you may have electricity in your house, you've got wires in your house and electricity going through them, a neuron, and electricity going through them. Just like that, we've got these electric signals passing through the neuron. And we can actually link this back to the question that we had earlier, where are there different types of neurons? And there are different types of neurons depending on the brain area where they are, but also they might do slightly different jobs, but also this electric signal that passes through them. So they've got the electricity passing through them. And when it gets to the end, some neurons, for some neurons, this electricity passing through them may mean that the message isn't going to be passed on to the next neuron, and that's the end of the message. But for some neurons, which we call excitatory neurons, for those ones, when the electricity passes through them, it actually makes that message pass on to the next neuron, and then to the next neuron after that in a big network. Lots of neurons connecting together. So I hope that answers your question. But yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? It's like electricity in our brains. So I think that's a really cool thing to think about. So our neuron that we are making. So remember, I had this neuron here that I was making, and we are adding the myelin sheath. So what I'm going to add for mine is actually just a bit of twine. So again, you can have ribbon or string, anything at all, just to wrap around the axon. So I've got a bit of twine, and I am going to just wrap it around my axon like this. There we go. And then probably stick it down just to make it stay in place with some sticky tape right at the end. And then for my, here we go, for my pipe cleaner neuron, which looked a bit like this, going to get another small pipe cleaner and wrap it around the axon of this one too. There we go. And the pipe cleaner, when you wrap it around, will stay in place. So there we need to stick that one down, but there we go. That's what that one looks like. Oh, I've got some more lovely questions. Thank you, guys. It's really great that this is really getting you thinking about the brain and neurons and how it all works. And somebody is asking, does my dog have neurons? And yes, absolutely, dogs, all animals have a brain. Your dog, your cat, a whale, elephant, I don't know, what are your favorite animals? I'm sure they've got neurons if they've got a brain. The brain is made of neurons. So yes, just like your brain is helping you speak and move and think, that's the same thing. It's happening in your dog's brain as well. So there are all these neurons with these electric signals going on in your dog's brain as well to help him or her move around, or have a think or do things. You might have them do a trick like roll over or sit down. That's their brain working and getting them thinking, oh yes, I know this trick. Usually gets me a treat, so I'm going to do it. So yeah, absolutely, your dog also has neurons.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, we've got some questions now, so we're going to find out if you've been listening as we've been telling you about the different parts of the neuron and what they do. So our question here, what is this part of the neuron called? You can see on the slide, and we've got an arrow pointing to a part of the neuron. So is this part the axon? Is it a dendrite? Is it the cell body? Or the myelin sheath? So have a think. And we've got 6 answers coming in. Well done. And we do have other questions in the Q&A, so we will hopefully get to those. But well done. 6 of you got that right. Well done. It is the cell body. So I've got my one of my neurons here that I made, and yeah, this is the cell body over here. And yes, we talked about the cell body being like the main office of the neuron and controlling what different parts of the neuron do. So well done if you got that one right.
Yeah, well done, guys. Good, really good work there. So hopefully you've all managed to make your neurons with us as well, and we'll be popping a email address in the chat at the end where you can send us photos of your neurons if you'd like to. We'd really love to see them. Lovely. So our next question is, what does the myelin sheath do? So that's the last part that we added to our neurons. For me, it's this part that I've wrapped around the axon here. So what do you think it does? Hopefully you can remember. If not, just have a go. That's absolutely fine. Your answers are coming in pretty quick, so you guys, I think you guys know your stuff. Brilliant. Lovely. So what have we got here? Lovely. So most of you put makes messages travel faster along the axon. So there are a few of you that put helps the neuron hear messages from other neurons. So really so the one that helps neurons hear messages, that's actually the dendrites, remember? That's kind of like the ear. So that's the part that hears the message, and then that message goes down the axon and to the axon terminal, which is kind of like the mouth. The myelin sheath that wraps around, actually, like Lydia said, is a bit like insulates that electrical message, just like you might have insulation around a wire to stop the electric leaking out. We've got this myelin sheath around the axon to help that message travel faster and to stop it leaking out. So that's really important because we do things really quickly, don't we? Like I'm speaking to you right now. I can move my hands really quickly. It's not slow, and that's really important for lots of things that we do every day, for those messages to travel faster so that we can do things fast.
Yeah, so we've got our
guys. Good job, everyone.
Well done. And I think I'm just going to answer a question. So we've got Tanmay, who's watching from India. So that's amazing to have you join us all the way from India. So we're very glad to have you. And Tanmay asks, are neurons sending the electricity so we can move our body part? So that's a really good question. And yes, we do have neurons in our brain, and we actually have neurons in other parts of our body. And yes, the neurons are sending messages. If we think, oh, I want to move my arm, then a message is sent all the way from our brain, all the way down to our arm and our hand, and it signals to muscles to say contract or relax and move, so that we can move our hands. So yes, really well done. These neurons are sending these messages so that we can move our body parts.
Well done. Great question, that one. Lovely. And I think, is there one more question coming off from that one? And it's,
yeah, I think, do all animals have neurons, and do they have different types?
That's a super interesting question. So yes, all animals do have neurons. All animals that we can think of. So there are, fish, or like we were talking earlier, maybe an elephant or a whale or a bird. We've all got neurons, so that we can so that we can do all these things. And yes, these neurons are in the brain, but they're also in the rest of our body, so that we can, so the brain, for example, will send a message. So you think about that, you want to move your arm, and your brain will send a message down, all the way down to your arm, through neurons, to be able to move your arm. Because of course that's all your muscle cells and your muscles, and you're acting with that to be able to contract and move, but that's the brain that's sending the message. So that's a really interesting question. That's a really interesting thought. But neurons in different animals can be slightly different. They can be bigger or they can be smaller as well. For example, we have something that's actually was studied a lot in neuroscience, in early neuroscience, when we first found out how neurons work. Is actually the squid giant axon used to be looked at. So from a squid, because their neurons and their axons are very, very big. So that made it really easy for scientists to be able to look at them rather than other animals. And that's actually helped us learn a lot about how neurons work.
Yeah, and yeah, some animals, neurons are kind of brain and nervous system that looks very different to ours in humans and monkeys. Some are very simple and some are very complicated. But yeah, we all need neurons to be able to work. So we've got, I think, our final question today. So neurons need to talk to each other for the brain to work. Is this true or is it false? Oh, so have a final think. Final question, what do we think? Is this true? Do neurons need to be able to talk to each other? Oh, well done. You have got that all correct. So yes, it is super, super important that neurons talk to each other, and all these different parts that we've been making with our neurons, the dendrites, cell body, axon terminal, and the myelin sheath, all in different ways help these neurons to talk to each other, send messages and listen for messages, so that the brain and the nervous system and the whole body can work properly and do what it needs to do.
Great, thank you very much, guys. So I think that was actually our last question. So what have we learned today? Hopefully maybe some of this is new. Hopefully you have found this interesting, and it's lovely that some of you have really got thinking about it and have sent us some questions as well. So we've talked about how the brain is a bit like a control center. It controls and allows us to do all these important things that we do every day, like think and talk and write things down and remember things and move around. So it's super, super important. And just like the body is made of cells, our brain is also made of cells, and these are called neurons. Maybe you've learned about them in school as nerve cells, or maybe you will later on, but we also call them neurons. And for the brain to work and do all these cool functions that we need to be able to do, these neurons all connect to each other and talk to each other. And this is really important for the brain function. And all those little different parts that we've added to our neuron model today are all really important for how the brain functions, for how neurons are able to talk to each other. So thank you very much, guys, and thank you for your cool questions as well. So yes, all animals do have neurons. They can be different shapes and sizes. For example, like a whale is really, really big. Their neurons would be really long, a lot longer than the ones we have as humans. But also, yeah, so all animals do have neurons. So plants won't have neurons, they communicate differently. And some very simple animals, like a sponge, they won't have neurons, but most animals that we can think of will have neurons, and their brain will function in an almost similar way to ours to allow us to do all these things. So if you'd like to send us photos of your neurons, we would absolutely love it. I'm just going to pop an email address in the chat where you can send some photos. We'd really, really love to see them. So these are the ones that I've made. This one's a bit messy, kind of fell apart halfway, but these are what mine look like. Lydia, what are yours like again? Oh,
Neurons.
So we'd really love to see yours as well. I'm sure you've gotten really creative. We'd really love to see them. Please send them to that. Please send them to that email address. So thank you very much for today, guys. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. But yes, thank you very much. From me, this has been great to talk to you all about neuroscience. So thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. I've loved chatting to you about the brain, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.